Good evening, welcome inside the Chris Evans Podcast, a part of Second Banana Media. It is Thursday, May 11th at 9:03. It has been about a 12-hour day covering this trial with Timothy Greene. The verdict was read just moments ago inside the Logan County courthouse, and I appreciate everyone checking us out. No disclaimers tonight because this case is now over. So no disclaimers, so all the jurors can now do all that watching and ask all the questions and all that good stuff. It was a long day inside the courthouse, and I will just do a few things ahead of time here. If anybody has any questions or comments, please put those into that area. I'll be glad to answer those as we wrap up this trial here with Timothy Greene today. One side note, and there'll be some other stuff coming up here in a little bit, but one of the jurors, remember there's 12 jurors, and there's one alternative juror. Well, that alternative juror was needed today. One of the jurors had their spouse got ill and had to go to the emergency room and called in like they are supposed to, and said they simply could not make it. And so the alternative juror was put into the juror's box today. So that's how the entire day started at 9 o'clock. Anybody else having poor cell service? I can tell you, Truebird, that's asking about the poor service. I was in the courtroom in the courthouse during jury deliberations, and I had the most horrendous cell service. In fact, I didn't really even have a phone for a good part of this evening. So maybe that's something that's going on throughout town. But yeah, in fact, again, okay, so I'm back almost full service on my phone. So, and I also have AT&T, so I don't know, and an iPhone. But anyway, so today, the defense, and I'm going to get right to the verdict here in just one second. I'm just going to set this up here. The defense called Timothy Greene to the stand, the defendant to the stand today. Very rarely does a defendant take the stand in his own testimony, and I've now covered 2 trials in a row where the defendant has come to the witness stand. It was crazy. It was unbelievable, but he took the witness stand. The second witness today was an expert witness, what they call an expert witness, and he was there to talk about blood alcohol content and blacking out and a bunch of stuff dealing with alcohol. So after the expert witness testified, the defense rest. Then the Judge Luke Duell worked on some jury instructions, and then the jury came back at 1:30, but they didn't come downstairs till about 2:15. Once they came down, it was closing arguments, and the state went first, and it was for about 15 minutes, and then the defense went, and their closing arguments was 30 minutes. And of course, the state has the rebuttal, and that last rebuttal went 25 minutes. The jurors were excused upstairs at 3:42 this afternoon. The bailiff came down at 3:47. So the jurors had the full case at 3:47. That 5 minutes, they were able to make a couple of phone calls if they need to pick up for childcare or anything like that. But once they go upstairs, their phones are taken away. That way it can be used for anything for this trial. But they went upstairs at 3:47 today, and there was 2 different notes. The way it works, if jurors have a question, knock on the door, the bailiff goes upstairs, retrieves the question that's written down on paper. It is given to the judge. The first one was they were wanting a laptop to look at CDs or DVDs as some of the evidence in the case. And then another knock came, and they asked a question regarding kidnapping and consent and the judge was able to answer that for them. Dinner was served again for the jurors. And okay, so there are 3 charges in this case. The first one is sexual battery. Charge 1, sexual battery. Charge 2 was kidnapping. And charge 3 was grand larceny of the phone. The jurors, again, knocked on the door to let the bailiff know. Bailiff went up, came down, and there was a verdict given at 8:23 p.m. So the jurors spent 4 hours and 37 minutes deliberating this case. After everybody was back in the courtroom, including the 2 defense attorneys, also Timothy Greene, the defendant, was brought back into the courtroom. The district attorney's office, the 2 attorneys there, and Linda Stevens with the OSBI at the table. In the gallery was myself. Timothy Greene's brother and mother were to my right. There were 3 OSBI agents to the left of me. There was the Attorney General, once was the lead detective for the Logan County Sheriff's Office, now works at the Attorney General's office. And then the Jane Doe, the victim, and her husband were the people in the gallery. There was also 3 deputies with the Logan County Sheriff's Office in there. The verdict was read at 8:34. Charge 3, the jurors came back. Charge 3 was grand larceny. And I have the notes here of what I think grand larceny was not to exceed 10 years, but the jurors come back with not guilty on charge number 3, which is grand larceny. Charge number 2 was kidnapping, and I think that maximum sentence was to not exceed 20 years. The jurors come back with not guilty on that charge. The first charge presented in this case is the sexual battery, and that is sentenced up to 10 years in prison. And the jurors come back and found Timothy Greene guilty of sexual battery. They sentenced the maximum penalty of 10 years. Timothy Greene has been in jail for about 2 years. There's a $500,000 bond that he was unable to make. And so he's been in jail for 2 years. I would certainly think time served. So he's got 8 more years in prison. Not sure what parole and all that stuff looks like for this case here. But Timothy Greene found guilty of sexual battery. His formal sentence will be June 2nd at 9 a.m. I think that's a Friday. It seems like June 2nd. Yeah, June 2nd is a Friday. That will be the formal sentence for Timothy Greene. Parole, I'm not sure what that looks like. I try to find that out later. But yeah, Timothy Greene found of sexual battery. Not a whole lot of emotion from the Jane Doe or her husband. Not really emotions from the attorneys for Logan County District Attorney's Office, but there was a little bit, not necessarily tears, but you can see true disappointment on the 2 attorneys for Timothy Greene. Both had their head down. Both, you can tell, were upset with that. Timothy Greene didn't have a whole lot of reaction initially. Just kind of had a real long stare, as you would imagine. After the verdict was read, Judge Duell thanked the members of the jurors, and they excused them. They go outside, and then Judge Duell excused all parties. So as the Jane Doe and her husband and all the OSBI agents and all those folks leave the courtroom, Timothy Greene was there talking with his attorneys about what to do next. I can just barely overhear, but I know his attorney Stone was talking about, you've done 20%. and then he's talked to him. We'll talk to you next week about some other stuff. Couldn't do that, but I thought was really cool. Judge Duell, before I get to that part, to my right, as the jurors were getting their last thank yous from Judge Duell, the mom who had been there the entire time. And we were in the courtroom for over 4 hours, 4 hours and 37 minutes. And the mom and the brother of Timothy Greene did not move. I mean, they were in the same spot. They were talking. They were, in the courtroom, very nice people. But after being there all day, all night, she did break down and started crying after the verdict was read. The brother was trying to, hug on her and console her. It was tough. I mean, the way she introduced herself to me on Tuesday is like, that's my boy, referring to Timothy Greene. And, but I thought as everyone left, Timothy Greene's getting some last words from his attorneys. He's shaking their hand, a little bit emotional. And then Judge Duell, I thought, was fantastic. He allowed Timothy Greene to go hug his mother. And usually with defendants in there, their family members are in there, and you can't. Sheriff deputies are in the courtroom at all times, and they don't allow any communication with the family members. If they start talking, they'll put a stop to it real quick. But Judge Duell allowed Timothy Greene to go over to his mother, and they hugged for a good 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and they were saying stuff to each other. And Timothy Greene came a little bit emotional, and then he was let out of the courtroom by the deputies. So that is the verdict tonight. Again, court started at 9 o'clock this morning. The verdict was read at 8:34. This podcast started at 9 o'clock, so it was indeed a long day for jurors. It was a total of 4 days if you count the jury selection on Monday. And I can go through some closing arguments if you guys want that, back and forth. There was a lot of stuff that was kind of rehashed a little bit. But Truebird, did you find it strange that it was non-guilty on the first two charges? What's your take on evidence for first two charges for the third charge on evidence? So the first charge was the big one. That's, if you're the defense, if you're the district attorney's office, you got the charge, the guilty verdict on the one that you wanted, which was sexual battery. That's the one that they truly wanted. 2 and 3, kidnapping and grand larceny, was, I didn't come out and just say it yesterday and the day before. I was wanting to hear more and more. And after the closing arguments, if I was a juror and I didn't have the back and forth, they were all upstairs talking back and forth over 4 hours. I think the jurors got this one right. The kidnapping, he was supposed to go pick her up. There's like 6 or 8 elements on kidnapping that the state had to meet. I thought it was a little bit of a stretch on the kidnapping, but it was kind of holding it against her will, basically. If you on the Jane Doe side, she was intoxicated, unable to give consent. So I could kind of see where the state was coming with the kidnapping, but didn't have a problem with not guilty on that one. Grand larceny was probably the toughest one that they would be able to get a guilty verdict, I thought. It really never came out how, and the grand larceny was due with the phone. It was never determined how the phone made its way into the yard. Brett Welding, the lead detective, said that Timothy Greene threw it out of the car, so him and Jane Doe couldn't be tracked from her husband, and or did Jane Doe drop it when she was out in the yard, eventually into the detached garage inside a car. But that was probably the toughest one. But again, the state got the one they were looking for, which is sexual battery. Thank you for the question. There haven't been a lot of questions on this one. I know has not been followed as much in this one, but this case came down to a lot of circumstantial evidence. There wasn't a lot of physical evidence, and there was some cases in the past that were able to be brought into this case as well. So the jurors were able to see a little bit of a pattern with Timothy Greene. How much did that play a factor? It looks like it did play a factor. It kind of showed a pattern between them. I'm just kind of going over my notes here. I don't see a lot of people looking for a whole lot of questions. But again, the biggest part of today's case was that Timothy Greene took the stand, and he remembered dates and timestamps very, very well. The state kind of led that maybe Timothy Greene had a couple of years to perfect his story. Some of it seemed rehearsed at times. It was very similar in some of these cases. There are a lot of similarities in the case between Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 2, a little bit of Jane Doe 3, but not a whole lot there. But yeah, if there's not any questions, and I'm trying to find Timothy took the stand, and there was a whole bunch of information that he was sharing on there, and I thought the state did a really good job on that. So verdict is in. Timothy Greene found guilty of sexual battery after a 4-day trial. True Bird, why are there blinds for a courtroom? You can't take pictures, though, through them. Why not just take them down? Good question, True Bird. The reason why they have, by the way, I think there's some, oh, never mind, I won't get into that. No, the reason why there's blinds is because juvenile cases are held within those, and those are obviously not open to the public, so they have to shut the blinds while they're given juvenile cases. So that's why there are blinds, and when it's not a juvenile case, they open the blinds so those can be viewed in. But correct, you cannot take pictures or video in the courtroom. So anytime you see pictures or videos in, I think, all Oklahoma courtrooms, I know Oklahoma County is the same way. That's why you see them shooting through glass through the double doors. So another good question, but yeah, they close the blinds so juveniles can have privacy when they go through their process. True Bird with all the good questions tonight. This is going to be the shortest one that we had on this one here, but if you have any questions, you can definitely put those on the YouTube or Facebook page, and I would be glad to answer that. 4 hours and 37 minutes was the jury deliberations today, and they find Timothy Greene guilty one of 3 charges, but the biggest one is sexual battery, and sentenced to the max by jurors for 10 years, and the formal sentencing will be on June 2nd at 9 a.m. Any more cases coming up? I don't think there's any in June or July. I think there might be some in July. I think the next one was a civil case, and that got turned down. But I think there might be one in August, but I'm not sure exactly what that case is. But nothing too big coming up on the horizons. Logan County kind of had a couple big ones here in a matter of a month or so with this one here. So the two cases we've had, remember the Dan Triplett murder trial, different judge in both of them, different district attorneys in both cases, obviously different defense attorneys, obviously different jury. So the only people that was the same people was some of the deputies and me in the courtroom. So True Bird, we just lost True Bird, Jersey Shore's on. I'm not sure what that means. Chris Mello, we need a break. Agreed. I think we will get a nice break as far as trials are concerned. All right, that'll do it here. Appreciate everyone checking in the last couple of days on this trial. I will begin working on other stories that I've not been able to get to in the last couple of days. I usually don't get those immediately, but I have fallen a day or two behind, so You'll probably be getting a lot of stories on the news page here in the next couple of days. Got to do some catching up. That'll do it for me. I appreciate, again, everyone checking in the last couple of days. And have a great, still some tornadoes warnings going out there. I think we're going to be okay here in Logan County. But I know a lot of people are probably watching the weather and catching the replay of this. So anyway, appreciate everyone. Have a great night.